Everybody a chance to relax. We are in question period, which means that you don't use it as an extension of your presentation that you've just finished. However, we'll give it a second here. We have a few people to get back in their chairs.
We'll have more people in here now.
I have them right here, and I'm going to add the letter to the insurance company. Add yeah, and the letter that Jean wrote to the MLA.
But if the house burns down, then it's because it wasn't there.
What contractor doesn't have? Okay, we're ready here. Give it another shot. Back in order, and this young lady at the back has her hand up. She'd like to ask a question. Then I know Chris was neglected there. Ma'am.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm not a public speaker and I don't like this. But I wanted to come out because I wanted to add my voice to the dialogue. And I wanted...
Excuse me, can you introduce yourself, please?
Yes, I'm Kirsten Ruzant. I grew up here in Grand Forks. I was born here and moved back here 3 years ago. And I'm in Area D, so yeah.
Okay.
So this is a pretty hot topic, as you can all tell. But I wanted my elected officials to know what can you not hear me? I don't, there's no mic. I'll try my best.
And it's traditional to kind of address council rather than address the audience.
It would work better if she went that way, I think. We can hear.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I'll do my best.
So you could go back to your seat actually and address it from your seat, or address council.
No, whatever people can hear.
Whatever you're comfortable.
Yeah, that's good.
All right. I went to the meeting that was at the Christian Center, and that was quite eye-opening for me. So I went home and I took the information, and my husband and I, we started going through some of the websites, and we started looking at some of the evidence that's out there. Nothing is conclusive. But you know what? It was compelling enough that my husband is an IT professional, I should put that out there. We have every kind of technology there is, and we've had for many, many years. He loves technology. And we started looking at the evidence, and it's not conclusive, but it was compelling enough that we decided we need to make some changes. We need to make changes for our health. We have young children. And because it's like, why play game? Why mess around with something? I'm 35 years old. I did not grow up with this stuff. Okay? We don't actually know. We don't know what the significance of some of this technology is on our health, on our bodies. We have young children. We don't want to mess around with this stuff. So we've been making changes in our home. And just the fact that I could be forced to put more of this technology in my home that I'm not comfortable with, I'm very concerned about that. And I'm concerned that my voice might be lost in this. I'm concerned that my vote might not be heard. And so that's why I thought, I'm going to come to this meeting, I'm going to listen to what people have to say, and I want to add my voice to this debate, to this dialogue. And I'm hoping that you, the people that we've elected, will listen. I want to be heard. The other issue I'm concerned about is that I've been told, okay, elections are coming up. If this all gets pushed through, we'll elect someone else. Well, but then what? What about this supposed fine that we might have? And I'm wondering, would you guys do that to us? We say, no, we don't want this. Well, too bad. We've signed this contract, and to get out of it, it's going to be millions of dollars. But we're not going to be around to help you with this problem.
Okay,
Would you?
Thank you very much. You
sorry,
wrap it up, please.
Sure. I'm just concerned that you guys will not be around to help fix this problem, maybe. So it's not a problem yet. But I'm just saying, please listen to me. I'm saying no, I don't want the smart meter. I don't want that. I'd like to look at some other options.
Thank you. Okay, Councilor Shagan had his hand up, and Chris at the back,
Sorry.
and then Julie.
I believe.
I think Councilor Chris Thompson.
My question is this, with all of the controversy surrounding the issue of water meters, and the letters, and the education that is trying to be fostered out there for people, has the city noticed a demonstrable decrease in water consumption over this third quarter?
Actually, I would have a graph we can. Sasha prepared something this morning just anticipating this. I think we have something that we have on the screen.
No, is it on the screen?
Oh. What I can show you is, yeah.
Because if there was a demonstrable decrease in water consumption, would the council reconsider their decision?
I don't think so. Is that it?
Yeah.
So what we've
Always
noticed
consider.
at the, and we've got a graph here that shows halfway through July the values of water that we've consumed, because we're not up to the moment. But Sasha will go grab the key. But at this point, and I'll give you just a snapshot of where we were, Mr. Mayor. Residential consumption in 2011 was 300,245 cubic meters for the month of July. In 2012, we were at 209,478 cubic meters for the month of July. Must have been a little bit wetter of a month, but in 2013, we were at 321,921 cubic meters, which when we represent that into cubic meters per day, we were at, for the month of June, we were at, in June 2014, we were at 1,760 liters per capita per day in our community. The average Canadian uses I believe, a little over 400 liters per capita per day. We were reaching 1,760.
Excuse me, we're not yelling out.
Mr. Mayor, as we went into July, this has been an incredibly high month, and we'll show it on the graph, and I can show where maybe there's some thought about leaks and whatnot. But what I can show you is we are reaching and absorbing and consuming an incredible amount of water in our community. And what's happening is those that are conserving are paying for those that are consuming a lot of water. And the other concern, Mr. Mayor, is the amount of water that we need to keep on reserve for the fire department is being compromised when we're consuming these large values of water. So I'll show you on the graph here what we have. Now, within this, we'll be able to see.
Well, we
get larger.
I like that.
Maybe make it 125.
200.
So we'll move it over. Okay, so what I can explain to you is what we do here is we calculate all the water consumption here for the wells, all the different wells that we draw water from, and then we tally that amount. So you can see we look in January, we're at 72,500 cubic meters for our community. In February, we're at 67,590 cubic meters. As we move through the season, you can see it getting gradual more, 93,000. May, 128,000. June, 191,000. July, 318,000 cubic meters. These aren't, if we move through the graph, can you move the scroll onto the graph for me? And Sasha, like I said, Sasha put this together all the way to that side. Sasha put this together this morning. But what it shows us here, all the way over, please. So what it shows us here is when we talk about leaks, leaks don't do this and then come back down in the winter months. Here's our residential consumption. Sorry, look to the legend, please. So actually I have the legend here. The legend is, this is our well production. This is the amount of water we're pulling from the well. This is the industrial commercial. Pretty consistent all the way through, is the red. The green is our residential consumption. It's a simple factor of minusing subtracting the ICI and the residential. from the well. What we found here is we don't have this water meter reading in yet, but we already know from our well production what our consumption values are, and we're through the roof. And this doesn't happen when leaks happen, because leaks don't shut themselves off in the winter. The customers that are talking about leaks, absolutely, we're going to look at some of these leaks, but they're down here in the winter months. When we reach the winter months and we're only consuming low volumes of water, that tells us that we do have potentially some leaks, but this isn't leaks. That's not leaks. The fire department has a certain amount of water that we have to have for the fire department for protection in our reservoir. But what's happening is we're over-consuming that, and that's what's driving us. And those that are conserving water are paying for those and subsidizing those that are over-consuming. And then that's what we're hearing as well. So anyway, this is the information that we have right now. We're going to get this finalized because this is only from the halfway point of July. We still have a lot more because we're expecting this is going to be our worst year over the last few years for water consumption. Because like I said, this was at the halfway point of the month, and we're already at over 300,000 cubic meters for the month.
So Chris, your question was, it was the increased sensitivity to the issue of conservation. Did we have a decrease? The answer is no. We had an increase. What looks to me like an increase?
It's like the healthy people paying.
Donald, please, we don't yell out in this meeting. We raise our hand and be recognized. I know you're new to this game.
So, Your Worship, then I would have to assume that if that is the consumption for the month of July, and August hasn't been much better, or half of July, then the majority of users are not conserving. And in order to conserve water, I'm hearing you're not going to have a choice but to meter, to encourage the consumption, or the reduction in consumption and conservation of water.
Correct.
So,
Councillor Wershagen, then Mr. Cook. Councillor Wershagen was before you.
And I think Ms. Butler was after me.
Oh, Julia, I'm sorry.
In fact, she might have been before me.
She's been very patient.
Before, okay.
Sorry, Julia.
It's Michael's turn.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out a couple of things here that seem to me to be somewhat inaccurate. And I'm not going to speak to this agenda item on here. Well, I will at the end. But I just wanted to, there was a comment made by, I don't want to mispronounce her name, Ms. Vaughn? Vaughn? Okay. And she made a comment that requests for a referendum, etc., have been ignored or denied, which is grossly inaccurate. Over the past few months here, I brought several motions to the table. I brought a motion to hold the referendum. It failed. I brought a motion to follow the original timeline that would have installed water meters in 2015. It failed. I brought a motion forward for voluntary installations as opposed to universal installations. It failed. And I also brought a motion forward for a moratorium. It also failed.
Thank you.
According to...
Not a pep rally. Thank you very much for your clapping.
Michael Premier.
Here's the thing that I think we're missing here is, I know there's this perception of we're all kind of in this together, and I gotta say I'm not. I've never been in favor of universal metering. I've made that clear for the past 6 years. However, according to our own bylaws within the City of Grand Forks, we have a bylaw that states after a motion has been put on the table and is defeated or carried, it has to breathe for 6 months. So all these things we're asking for, or this group is asking for, cannot actually be brought back to the table because they've all been vetted, they've all been defeated for a 6-month period. I'm not too sure if 6 months is up. I don't think it is. But here's the thing. Let's say it was up. Let's say these 6 months were up. And I could come forward again during a regular council meeting and bring forward all those motions, one by one, in that order, if I so chose. Without feeling there's an appetite here for that change, I would like to see it. I don't personally think it would be seconded, quite honestly. What that does is that now puts us back into another 6-month cycle, which means you're tying the hands of the next council until end of February, because those 6 months. So is it worth it to waste a motion and then knowing that it'll probably be defeated again and let it sit into the next council?
Sure.
We've had situations like this before, and I just wanted to point out that our own bylaws state that, yeah, I could bring it back, but do we want to tie the hands of the next council? by knowing that it's going to be defeated, and then they have to sit on it for 4 months.
Okay, Councillor Rushagan, that's, you're finished.
Yes.
Just in response to Mr. Vershagen, could you not ask that the bylaw that's voting on tonight be tabled? That's a different motion than the ones that have already been asked for.
Okay, this is unusual dialogue, Julianne.
All right, just a suggestion. Anyways, got 2 questions for you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I'd like to read a letter from my insurance company, from Christine Henderson, RHC Insurance Brokers, head office in Nelson. I've attached a copy of the wordings covering your home and contents. The way that this policy works is that you're covered for everything except what is excluded in the wording, see pages 3 and 4, loss or damage not insured. If you have someone work on your home or property, you should make sure they carry their own liability and workers' compensation. If they cause damage to your property, depending on what it is, your insurance company may cover you. I'm putting this forward in question to the unlicensed workers that are being hired by Neptune to install.
Okay, could we stop and answer that question for you?
I'd like to finish the letter first before we get rabbit trailed. They may cover you and then subrogate against the worker's insurance if the worker is found negligent. Your policy does not cover the fixing of any faulty workmanship, but does provide some coverage for resulting damage. All claims are looked at individually, so it's difficult to give you a black and white answer. Water damage claims are particularly tricky, as we have to determine what causes the loss. Is it a broken pipe, or did water seep in from the inside? So my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is if these unlicensed, unprofessional, unskilled workers that are being hired do a shoddy job in installing my water meter, and I'm responsible for maintaining that meter and fixing that meter if it's broken, and I make a claim on my insurance, if they cover me even, is the city insured, or is Neptune insured to pick up the cost when the insurance company goes after them for that damage?
I believe we are, and Mr. Allen will clarify that.
Mr. Mayor, the homeowner is not expected to do any work on the water meter. The city is responsible for the water meter and the installation and the insurance associated with it. So if there is a claim resulting in a faulty water meter, where there is a water meter that compromises the home, the city's insurance, along with the contractor's insurance while they're doing the installation, are responsible. After the fact, if it was a result of the same as one of our electrical meters on the home, if it was as a result of that, the insurance company would come out and determine who caused the situation, and then our insurance, if it did cause it, would cover it.
Yes. So
we have $31 million in liability insurance.
That answer your question, Ms. Butler?
Sounds like it could be expensive for the city. My second question is, I have water use stats here from 2004 through 2012. Donna Semenoff provided me with these stats. They're the total used by our wells during those years. And I've noticed here, and I don't understand why, I'm asking through you to the CAO or perhaps to Sasha. From 2007, the total cubic meters of water pumped was around 3 million cubic meters. In 2008, that dropped to 1,780,000. And then it's remained constant around there since 2007. So why this huge drop in water consumption between 2007 and 2008? And if we're conserving that much more water now, how were we able to provide fire protection in those years when we were pumping 3 million?
Closure of Canbar would be one of the things that we could look at there in terms of water use. But we certainly could look at that. But is it relevant at all at this point in what you're...
Absolutely, because you're saying we can't provide fire protection now with our gross overuse of water, yet we've more than cut our water consumption in half since 2007.
I don't think we said we can't provide it. I think we said that we can sort of compromise at a certain level.
So it wasn't an issue back in 2007. I imagine the fire department was still able back then to provide that fire protection.
I'm sure they would. Thank you. Okay, Councillor Rushagan, you've had a shot at it. I've got 2 other hands back there. Mr. Ferrand at the back, patiently waiting.
I thought Jean was first.
Oh, yes, Jean. Okay, Jean, and then Donald, and then. Okay, people, you don't have to come up. You know, you can ask from the.
Okay.
It's actually easier.
I'm here. First off, I agree with Councillor Shagan. He has made several motions that have fallen on deaf ears. But more importantly, there's still never been any consecrated effort on part of council or the mayor to look at what other communities are doing. They are doing the same job by a public education program and finding their own leaks at a fraction of the cost.
Gene, that is blatantly untrue.
It's not. There's
Blatantly
more than
untrue.
20 communities.
We have
in here.
looked at so many communities and compared.
Please
so
let the
many
public speak.
Let me say it a different way. Have you specifically looked at the communities between here and Cranbrook and looked at it? You just go on to, I believe it's Water Savings, the outfit that hired the engineer, Columbia Basin Trust site. And you'll read, there was a great article in the paper again on the city of Creston and what their water savings were. Water savings programs, just public education requires virtually no fund, very low amount of funds, and it works. I talked to the people in Fruitvale, I believe it was, here a week or so ago. They told me that there's a couple of communities have used public education programs, and on the second year they found they didn't even have to use them. The public was complying with the water rights. Cranbrook installed at their cost timers onto the spigots coming out of your house that supplied water to gardening, whatever. Water ambassadors set up the timers, and then the water ambassador, who's a temporary 4-month employee, traveled the city house to house to make sure that people were compliant. I spoke to people in West Kelowna about their water system, where they also installed water meters more than 7 years ago, and they have 32,000 people. And what the one fellow told me that was on their water board for 7 years or more, him and his wife, is out of the homes that were lived in by the 32,000 people, they had less than 5 people that they had to take any remedial action with after the homeowner education program went through. And out of that, there was 1 or 2, he said, where they were fined once or twice, whatever their bylaw policy was, and then the water was shut off and the people didn't get their water turned back on until they paid their fine. The point being that you can accomplish the same goals you want to accomplish with a public education program, finding your own water leaks, and not involving any electronic meters or anything controversial that will cause the problems other people are concerned about. And you'll do it all for a fraction of the cost.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you very much.
Amen.
Thank you for interrupting, Mr. Mayor. We've got a few people outside that also want to ask questions, so if there's anybody inside willing to give up their seats so that we can funnel a few more people through, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay.
Here we are.
So while they're shuffling around, I'm just going to read what Mona has posted here. She wanted me to ask you a question.
Okay, well, it's up with this idea that cost us millions of dollars.
Okay, so
Where does he get that number?
aside from not liking that you're hosting meetings during the day when people who work can't attend, she has this to ask. What happened to the need to conserve water for the sake of the environment? Everyone is talking about their right to water. That is the right to the need to live, not water lawns, flower beds, and wash cars. Every year we are told the condition of the Kettle River is dire. Our aquifers ebb and flow with the Kettle. People need to participate in water conservation, and that is for the environment, not for the city to save money. Every day I see people abusing their use of water, watering outside of restricted hours. Somehow the conversation needs to be about the environment, not cost savings. If people won't participate in conservation willingly, then perhaps meters are the answer. Smart meters, well, that I completely agree is not the answer. And that's Mona Matai.
Thank you. Thank you, Mona. Yes, ma'am. Oh, Don. Okay, we've got a line out there. We've got Brand, we've got, I can't see your face back there.
Trip.
Yes. Okay, Donald.
After 35 years in this community, and 30 years of which have been spent actively working for water protection, after investing tens of thousands of my own money on issues that concern water in the boundary. My question is the following. We live in a country where principles such as universal medical care are like at the top of the list from coast to coast in terms of principles that we want to live by. I wonder, Mr. Mayor, how a principle such as the one of the water issue of user pay is not about to undermine, like we all know, those universal services principles that drive this country. I am, I really understand it's important to address the water issue in Grand Forks, the aquifer and the river. I'm having my meeting next Monday night at the Senior Citizens Hall. But here, why can we, in a community that's been long-standing, left-leaning, new democratic type, accept the principle such as water, the commodification of water, where I will have to pay for the water I use, but my neighbor who can't afford to have water will not be able to have water because he's totally broke. I really question, did you look at the idea of the principle you're bringing into this community? We are not a business. We are a community.
Amen.
Right, amen.
And to answer Donald's question, yes.
How?
I can't see you.
Okay, and yeah, there are more people in the back who want to
There's
ask questions.
2 seats here.
Speakers can leave and let someone else in. Who was next here? I think Miss Triplett.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I wanted to come up here because the people in the other room are having difficulty hearing over the speaker phone. And this is an open meeting for the community where we are able to come and speak our concerns with you. I just wanted to come this morning, and you know that I'm quote unquote the Wi-Fi lady. Most of my concerns are about the issue of the water meters using RMF radiation. And while people say this, the jury's still out, there may be no danger, I just wanted to let you know so that you can be informed. This is what's going on in the world. In the U.S., a superior court has ruled that scientific witnesses, these are PhDs, scientists who study EMF and RF radiation, they now can testify for consumers suffering from brain tumors caused by or promoted by cell phone use. Cell phone use is, as we all know, using the RF and EMF radiation technology, the Wi-Fi technology, just the same as the water meters that are going to be put into our homes. However, the vast difference between the cell phones and the Wi-Fi meters that are going to, water meters that are going to be put in our basements, in the baseboard next to the family room, in the urinal at my church that is 1 foot away from the gentleman with the pacemaker who stands there, they emit constantly, once every 14 seconds, with a 7-second millisecond burst that we've been told by Mr. Allen. Now, that 7-second millisecond burst, or the 7 millisecond burst happens once every 14 seconds, so 4 times a minute. And how many thousands of times a day is that? That stuff is bursting out there. We went, my husband and I took a reading at the church on Monday with our meter. We didn't know this last Wednesday when you gentlemen were there, and thank you so much for coming to that presentation. We appreciated you being there, and we hope you learned some things. That meter of mine, or ours, showed a burst of 195. 195. I'm not lying to you. It's right there on the meter. This is a huge concern. And as I just read, the U.S. Superior Court has ruled that scientific witnesses can testify for consumers. You know, when people in our community start getting sick, when people with pacemakers all of a sudden have an episode and, you know, whatever happens when a pacemaker goes, do people just die on the spot? I'm not sure. But I tell you, every single person who goes into the washroom at my church, I'm going to make sure that they know that that stall right there has the water meter. Please go and use the one at the end that's at least, 5 feet away. This is very serious, and I just wanted to let you know that. Thank you. Oh, yes, I will submit this, and I also need to submit Ms. Bond's paperwork as well, if that's okay.
And a motion to accept.
Sure.
Okay, and a motion to accept?
No, you can't call
We're
motion.
not accepting anything at this point. This is a committee vote. You can hand them to us if you like.
Okay, well,
Give it to me.
Tonight,
give it to him.
Yeah.
When will you accept it?
Except now, we can put the minutes for the next meeting.
Not sure that we're in a position to accept.
She can provide this, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah.
We have to let her know it so we can get the information to council as information received, just like whenever the public does provide it to us, provide us in a timely fashion so we can submit it to council.
You can give it to us and we'll submit it to council.
Yeah, it'll be processed, it'll go through the process.
Yeah. So go ahead and give it to Diane.
Okay.
Okay, how are we doing for lineup of questions? I think you've been waiting, sir.
No.
I do have a question. First, an observation. Now, Mr. Allen made an erroneous statement. I have a garden hose, and I point the garden hose if I'm watering. At one point, years ago, I found a leak in the garden hose. When I turned it on, it dripped out. When I turned it on strongly to try and do something, it screamed out. That is what happens in the summer when there's hot, higher use. The water leak increases exponentially. That's a fact.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody with any sense who's ever been working with a garden hose knows a leaking hose will scream out when you turn up the water use.
Thank you very much.
Now, my question was, do we learn from history? And I wanted to say, there was about 2,000 years ago, history is repeating itself right now, 2,000 years ago, approximately. In the days of Augustus Caesar, all the world was to be taxed. And that's when we understand that you have all heard of the man, Jesus, who was born in Bethlehem, because he had to go to that place to be taxed. That was 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years later, what do we have? We have the New World Order, which is the globalist agenda. We all know about Agenda 21. They brought out universal metering, but the whole world will be taxed through water. This is happening all over the world. And here's the question.
Yeah, please sum it up.
Okay. The question, there's three choices for you. The man Lenin, who was, you know who Lenin was, he was the communist.
Yes, I do, sir. Would you please get to the point?
Lenin, when people supported his agenda, he called them useful idiots. Now, I'm not saying that about you. However, what we're seeing is the support of the New World Order, unsustainable development, and this water metering is part of this.
Do you have a question, or are you just going to continue to talk?
Yes, well, the question was,
Are we
is this,
idiots?
well, this is the question.
Yeah.
There's three possibilities. One is somebody's palm is getting greased, and I'm not saying that. Somebody's
You're
pushing this.
insinuating it, which is another kind of,
Okay.
the kind of thing you're doing here is very uncomfortable for me.
Okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to be
Or
uncomfortable.
Sit down.
Can I finish the question?
Please have a question.
Okay. And the other thing was the Lenin concept. The other was Paul. He
No,
saw the light.
Sir, sit down. We're not listening to you.
We're asking you to see the
Bible
light.
stories. If you had a question, you could ask it. We have other people that are waiting to ask
The
questions.
question was, which of these three are you going to be?
Thank you. I won't be answering that. Okay, now, this gentleman in the back has been patient, sir.
My name's Al, of course, and I've lived here for about 30 some odd years. And somehow or other, we always got through the hot weather months with low water, and somehow we made it through without running out of water. But one thing really concerns me that nobody's talked about in here today. Sometime in the past, maybe in the past year, they were talking about building a dam up at Big White, and I'm wondering what effects that would have on our water supply.
Quickly, I can tell you it would have no effect according to the professionals I'm hearing. That if they filled that on Freshen, it really wouldn't have effect. But that plan has been scrapped some years ago. I haven't heard it on the table for at least 2 or 3 years. But in fact, filling a reservoir like that at a high range altitude would have no effect on our water.
Oh, thank you.
And Jim?
Yes, just a quick question. Yes, the $2 million you say you have to give back to go backwards on this, and you know, to replace that $2 million, it's going to cost us $2 million. How do you get these figures?
I made that one up.
Did you?
Yes.
Okay.
If somebody asked me a quick question, I had to give a quick answer.
But that's...
The fact is, it's $1,300,000 project, and if you welch on your contract with the company, what do you think it'll cost us?
Well, it might cost us more in the long run doing it every meter to every house.
It might.
It will. And also, there is a, when you run water meters to everybody's house, I believe it is roads, because you have frost heaves, you got, you know, ice damaging the roads, damaging the pipes at the same time. And people don't realize every spring it gets worse and worse and worse, and that damages the pipes. And nothing's, enough said.
Yes,
I'm on the same side as 3/4 of the people in town here.
We are having, you know, a lot of attention to the maintenance and upkeep of the water system as part of our ongoing costs, not our asset replacement costs. We still have to look at what we've got with maintenance and repairs. And further, Les.
I just wanted to ask Sasha if you could tell me what he was saying about the pressure being different. Is the pressure higher in the wintertime on the lines than it is in the summertime? No difference. Okay, so there you go.
Baloney. I have a question. Are you going to get one put in your house?
I'm in the rural area.
There you go.
There you go.
That's right.
And who else is?
There you go.
Rural area, I'm getting water here.
I've asked to have one provided to me, and I live in Area D because I'm curious to know what my own consumption is, and I have no way of monitoring it. So, for my own personal information, I'm asking to have one.
You could probably buy one.
Okay, we're talking out of turn. Ms. Thompson and Councillor Shagan.
Just a question on meters in general. Are any of the meters currently being read manually? Electric meters, I thought they were all read by remote.
So, Mr. Mayor, currently in the community, there is already water meters in residential homes that are not being read at this time. They were required to be installed, I think, many years ago, but there is, the new construction has water meters in them. The electrical meters are being read remotely. What happens is a person, if I'm answering the question correctly, somebody drives through the neighborhood and the receiving unit grabs the signals and it goes into a USB key, and that little stick goes into the computer at Bev's office downtown, and we generate the water bills from there.
No, there was a gentleman that was saying his electric meter was being read manually, and that was not my understanding, and I just wanted to check whether or not that was the case.
No, they're read with a it's called a TR.
They're using our
Which would be the same
in Area D,
technology
maybe.
as the water meter.
In Area D, they may be manually read.
I'm not sure.
Yes.
So this gentleman lived up Riverside.
Yeah, so he may be out of in the rural area. No. Councillor Shagan and then Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just be remiss, I feel, if I don't mention this, and it had to do with, it wasn't brought up in the presentation. However, in the papers that were sent to City Hall for the delegation, it was mentioned as point number 1. It says, the statement that the city intends to seek to install water meters outside city limits. Residents in these areas are entitled to have full disclosure and duty of fairness, including the right to be heard regarding their views. I know a little bit about this. I'm 2 courses away from completing a 5-year program in the National Advanced Certificate in Local Government Administration. So I know a little bit about this. We don't have that right to install water meters outside our city boundary. Area D is its own local government. So is Area C, and in fact, neither of which run their own water utility. Sion Water, Grand Forks Irrigation are what runs Area D. If there are any concerns whatsoever about water meters being put into Area D or C or any other region, speak to your local irrigation district. It is out of our jurisdiction. We have no say whatsoever in it. By legislation, by provincial legislation, we have no more power than Area D does when it comes to these kind of things. And they don't even run their own water utility. I just wanted to point that out because it was on the record.
All right, thank you. Ma'am,
Do you want me to go up there or stay here?
you can sit there.
Okay, I'll stand. My name is Sol Alstrom, and I live 2 kilometers from the Grand Forks border. So I am not a resident of Grand Forks, but I am a resident of Boundary, of British Columbia, and of Canada. I watch my country selling water rights to the states, and then I watch you having issues. Shouldn't we be addressing our government on the higher echelon as to what right do they have to sell our water, and then you are presented with this issue where now you're presenting your community with water meters. Einstein helped create the atom bomb, and he lived to regret it. Germany created Hitler, and the world lived to regret it. Is Grand Forks going to live to regret this? Because lawsuits are going to come against you that are going to far exceed the $1.3 million because of how people can sue today. I'm here because you are going to set a precedent. And though no one else in this region seems to care about that, I care. And you were right. Area D is not. But you know, we were once allowed to have outhouses. And then the government said, you can't have outhouses. Then they tried to make composting toilets. And the government said, you can't have composting toilets. It's not about what you're doing, but it's about precedent. And it's about the unknown. I have a niece right now dying from ALS. I had a friend just died at the border between the 2 communities of ALS. Suddenly got it. I have another friend that just got ALS. Now, I'm not saying that ALS, I'm saying that our world is doing things. We have trees that have bugs that shouldn't be there. We're watching everything, and the thing is we don't know enough to step forward, and I don't want to see your president in my community, and I don't want to see this council, who is working hard, honorably, the mayor and the council, are trying to work hard for the people. And I don't ever want to see, I watched Greenwood go through all kinds of lawsuits. Cities can't afford lawsuits. You have a budget and you need to use your budget. So in your consideration, have you thought about that? Have you asked that question? What about the whole issue of water, right? Even the uranium mining that they want to do in. Are you advocating against that so it doesn't affect your water table? And are you advocating for the whole of Canada, for every person that lives in British Columbia, that lives in Canada? Because what you do does affect everybody else. Because if I go and have a car accident and somebody is awarded $10 million for that, that means everybody behind me
Ma'am, can you
that.
get to the end, please?
That is the end. That is the end.
Thank you.
And so have you considered
Yes, we have.
the consequences and how? I don't want you just to say yes. I want you to explain how.
We looked at the other 120 other communities that have installed them. We've looked at all the other communities that haven't installed them, and we've done comparisons. If our staff wasn't doing that, they would be under the gun for not doing their job. So, yes, we have. Thank you. Further questions?
You are for the community. That's what
Excuse me. Gentleman behind you.
Grant Crawford, just a humble handyman of sorts, not very expert on anything in general, but I got a question. I understand that our water meters kind of come out of the gas tax or something like that, and we're not paying through the nose for them. Is that true?
Yes.
As a handyman, I'd just like to know, because don't make a hell of a lot of money. I'd just like to know, generally speaking, when I'm doing some carpentry and stuff like that, the rule of thumb is usually materials are about 1/3 on a job. I can ask my plumber council member, and usually labor is about 2/3 of the job, generally speaking. Where are we coming up with the other 2/3 of the cost to install these things? Where's the money coming?
The money that we have, 1.3 million, that we saved up over 6 years from gas tax, is going to pay for installation as well as the capital cost of the units.
So if I'm hearing you right, then 1.2 million goes for water meters?
Installed.
And that would be 2.4 million for installation?
No. The 1.3 is all inclusive of the purchase of the water meter and putting it in.
Well, it's cheaper than paving, I guess.
And I hope they do a good job. We're really counting on them to be as sensitive as possible to individual homeowners and where they want it and how we put it in.
Okay, that was my question.
Thank you, sir. You know, I'm feeling like we're pretty much exhausting the run, and we've got quite a bit of items on the agenda to continue with. Possibly one more question, David?
Morning, council. Morning, mayor. I'm not saying good morning because I think for you it's not such a good morning. My question is not concerned with water meters whatsoever. My question is concerned with the election coming up in November. As many of you know, many of us people from Grand Forks, including people behind me, leave. They go down south, Arizona, Mexico, etc. If you leave after November 5th, there's no way for us to vote. Now, if you're in the regional district, you can do a mail-in, but in Grand Forks, there is no way for you to vote if you're not here. What I would like to see is some effort made to accommodate those snowbirds, either by voting online or voting by mail. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And could you remind us again what the pre-vote dates are?
Your worship, the advanced voting is November 5th and November 12th. And those are the earliest that people are able to vote.
In the municipal?
Within the city of Grand Forks.
Is that a law?
We had presented a mail-in bylaw back in the spring as far as something the council wished to visit, and there was a lot of showed the costs that were involved as far as doing a mail-in vote, so it was decided from council at the time not to do a mail-in vote.
Okay, so that's the answer, David. We don't do a mail-in vote. Council had that decision to make several months back, and the 5th and the 12th are the two pre-vote days. It doesn't look like we have a lot of freedom to change that at this point. And the decision of council to have a mail-in vote at this late date would be pretty impossible to turn around.
Legislatively, your worship, you can't. August 5th is the final date.
You can't, actually, legislatively. August the 5th was the final date when we could change any election date.
Thanks for hearing my concerns.
Okay, and I'm sorry people are going to miss it. Okay, I'm ready to wrap it up at this point. Councillor Ware, did you?
I just wanted to point out that the provincial government electoral reform that we've just been through, and with the new 4-year term, there was a hope that, and it is on the floor, to change the next election. They were trying to put it through legislation for this first 4-year term, but they will be looking at moving the next election in 2018 to October to provide for, you know, the individuals that do leave our communities throughout British Columbia for the winter months.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Wires. And I am going to cut it off at this point.
Mr. Mayor, you said one more question on water. And that was not a water question.
Sure, what the heck, let's be flexible.
My question to you is, Mr. Mayor, and to the City Council is, have you guys looked into, I know that there's been electronic meters that read wrong. I know even in cell phones. My daughter just got a bill of $800, and her bill has never been over 79. It was a malfunction of her phone. They honored it. What's going to happen if all of a sudden water meters start malfunctioning in town? Who's going to be responsible? Is there going to be an address to that question, or is it going to be ignored?
No, it certainly will be immediately addressed, Mr. Allen.
Mr. Mayor, so upon the reading of the meter, and if it proves there's a discrepancy, so generally meters have a tendency to under-read. Typical process. What happens?
Trust in government.
Well, what happens though is.
That's rowdiness, please.
So, Mr. Mayor, the process is in the bylaw, and this is typical from all the other communities, is the meter, if the customer has a dispute with the meter, we'll come in and we'll look at that, we'll investigate it. If it proves through the software or something else that there is a problem, the city will have a policy in place to deal with the situation immediately with the customer.
Right.
If the customer still feels as though there's a significant problem with the meter can be taken out. The city will have it tested. If it is if it's proven that it is the city's fault, the city will pay for the difference and then install the new meter and look at the, we'll have to talk about the policy with the rate commission on, or the rate group on the rate committee set by council on how that would be remunerated.
Right, so there will be a review process to it, and the citizens group that will help to establish the meter rates, the rate that we do eventually charge, will also have a hand in ensuring that there are no situations like that that don't go to the attention. One rebut, and then we've got a packet in here, sir.
Okay, to add to that comment that you're making, there are situations and there are scenarios in place right now where people are cut off. They are not allowed to continue with their service because of the meter reading, and they're not.
Okay, and that's happening in Detroit, and we're not in Detroit, so that's it. Councillor Krog has one question going on with the agenda.
Through you to the staff, we've been advertising for volunteers to sit on the committee that will select and decide on water rates and all of these issues. What's our response been so far?
We've had, how many volunteers?
We've had, I believe, 9. We've had 9, and that report will come as per the typical process, will come in camera to council.
Yes.
And then council will have that, discuss it, and then it'll go back, and those residents will be notified via letter on that process, and seeing if they're still willing to participate in that. And then the process will be defined kind of a bit of a timeline for the customer or for the resident.
Thank you. So there are 9 people to that
so far.
All right.
Mayor, I'd like to move that,
Okay.
Councilor, make a motion to receive the presentation.
Certainly.
And to call for recess following.
All those in favor? And as far as the recess goes, do you think maybe we could do the water meter open house?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Since this group is interested in that, they may wish to stay around and listen to it.
Yeah.
Okay. And moving on, thank you all for your input. Presentations from staff, the manager of operations. This has to do with the very successful summary of the installation and the information open house that was held by Neptune. And who would be doing this?
I think Roger will,
Roger, welcome.
Give us a bit of a synopsis.
Okay.
Well, as you can tell, it's high interest situation, so we're really happy with the 65 plus that showed up during the 4 hours that it was open.
Yeah.
Great questions from everybody. I thought I saw a lot of really good interaction between the supplier, the installers, the staff.
Can you hold on?
Hey,
Roger.
Somebody's trying to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Krog.
Sorry.
Okay, Roger, go ahead.
Yeah, just great interaction. I think there's a lot of questions that were answered. I hope it was meaningful for everybody that showed up. We did get a few more people sign up for the rate committee at that meeting, which was encouraging. And yeah.
Just and to further summarize, there was a lot of interaction with our staff in relation to questions coming regarding the metering process, and most of the customers' concerns that we heard were related to how's it going to work? What if I have irrigation outside, and these types of questions. So from our perspective, we learned a lot more from the residents or the customers from our end, what they would like to see from this. A lot of the questions revolved around the mock billing period, how to understand how the rate's going to work, and then as we explained that it will be a 2-year process or a 1-year process, depending on council's wishes, to review that will give us a lot more information on that. Most of the residents that were there were very pleased with the process for the dialogue. We didn't hear a lot of big concerns on anything. We had one or two people that were, they were somewhat concerned. But after that, the process was, the information is here. This information is in the package for everybody to look at this. But there was many questions though that were
Some
there.
good ones.
Yeah, some rain barrel questions, the implementation of costs, additional time and labor required to read meters, who will pay for faulty meters, mock billing questions, is there plans to privatize the water supply? These questions. So there's a lot of good questions in there. So the engagement of the community was excellent, Mr. Mayor. So it was great.
Yeah, I thought it was a good dialogue as well.
I like how
Okay.
everybody left.
Council, comments and questions? Ms. Butler.
I think it's important that the people here understand the process that you're going to be going through to put these meters in their houses. Now, you mentioned that they'd be doing a mail out and that people would have 2 weeks to respond to their mail out. Can you elaborate on that?
So this is the implementation plan.
That's correct. They ask for 2 weeks for people to respond. If they don't, then they'll do what they call a door knock. So they'll actually come and leave a little thing on the door saying, we're kind of waiting for you to give us a call anytime. There's a 1-800 number.
And then what?
And then if they continue to refuse, you go into a different category.
Which is? Keep going.
Well, we'll follow it up. We'll follow it up with another knock or try to reach out to them by phone to find out what the challenges are. Because sometimes people work in the evenings. They're not available during the week. There's multiple challenges that residents will encounter. The installation company is aware of all these different things. And then we'll continue to reach out to the customer to make arrangements for the installation.
Right, and I think what Ms. Butler is pushing at here is to have us say what would happen if someone totally refuses to put a water meter or have a water meter
But
put in
isn't
their house.
available for comment.
Is never available, does not make themselves available. That guerrilla tactic would be typical of some of the tactics I've seen by a few people who are against the meters. So I would guess that that's something we should talk about in the collective group with other citizens to see how we might handle that effectively. And other questions? Hello, yes, ma'am.
I had a meter installed already, and I have a commercial building.
Yeah.
And I was not notified at all. When I came back from being out of town, there it was, the meter was in my place.
Really?
Of course, the person I was renting my building out of let them in, but it wasn't their right to let them put the meter in without me being notified. And it's there. That's just.
When were those commercial meters put in?
10 years ago?
Oh, a while back ago.
How
I
many?
wasn't there. I wasn't here.
10 years ago?
No, not that.
Maybe more than 10.
Yeah. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Maybe you'd like to,
Whose name's on the bill?
It's on mine, it's in my name. But no, I wasn't
Lorraine.
notified. So.
Right, Lorraine.
Excuse me. Hi, my name's Lorraine. I live in Grand Forks here. I was wondering what happens if you're out of town for 6 months and you've got this notice and there's no way you can reply to it? What happens?
So it would be a situation where snowbirds
Yeah.
are leaving town and are not available to give permission to put the water meter in the house. Would they continue to get water? Or what would we do with
I mean,
that?
am I going to be charged this $600 or $800
No.
because I've been out of
Mr. Mayor.
country for 6 months?
Let me.
Sure. So what happens is that, this isn't, there's going to be all kinds of factors. If somebody may be in the hospital, they may be dealing with something different, maybe something personal that they're not available for. But at the end of the program, the installation period wraps up at the end of June 2015
of next year.
Of next year. So that's when we're anticipating that. So we're giving the residents ample time. So if something that they're anticipating something like that, they can arrange for that. And then after the fact, if there is still a timeline that they're not able to meet, then we'll still be able to make arrangements. We're not, like the mayor said, we're trying to get this met within the timeline for the contractual obligations. But if something happens and it gets passed back to the city, we'll have to make those arrangements after the fact because the contractor's here to do their job and they're expected to do the job that we've hired them to do. Once that is over and they've met their contractual obligations, they're leaving town. And then we'll be back in to kind of finish it off, or actually no, to finish it off. That'll be what we'll be expected to do.
So we'll work with those unusual circumstances individually with people. That was it from this corner, ma'am.
So Alston again, I have 2 questions. One, has the city set a life-preserving bottom line of water that won't be charged? So,
You're charged now a flat rate. And so with this new system, I understand there has to be a base rate, although that base rate may be quite low, there still would be a base rate that would be
with a
charged.
base wall.
Right, regardless of whether you are exceeding that or not, you would still pay a base rate.
That would come back, Mr. Mayor, that was like when the residents that sit in the review process to review the rates, there will be so many options that can be put out there. The one thing that's gonna be put on the table is the cost to run the utility, and then depends on how we butcher it up to share and allocate the cost, will be reviewed by the group, and the group will make a recommendation to council, and then council would be implementing that process if they so choose. So there's there's so many variables in there. We don't know exactly what that base rate, or, I've seen it be, you pay for what you consume, or you just pay the flat rate plus some consumption, or you get a block of water put in with your basic rate. There's so many variables right now that would have to be discussed by the group, because they're going to need to have all the information basically back down to these values here, the consumption and the operating costs are going to be put onto the table. So we have to look at all those pieces, because the utility has to cover its costs.
And my second question is, Honorable Mayor and Council, may I submit my name to be on that?
Certainly you may.
Oh, she lives in town?
Oh, she lives in the rural area?
You guys don't live in town either.
But they were elected by town people.
Just a minute, there is another
Just
thing,
so
we
I
did
know.
cut it off.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, we did advertise it for several weeks, and it was recently closed, I think, on Thursday last week, the 14th.
Why would
Okay.
you close it before the meeting? Why would you
We
sign
have
it?
9 people, we've had it open for at least a couple months now that we've been asking, so it was a matter of having to put some cutoff date on it. But it's been out there for a long time, you haven't noticed.
But to put the cutoff date before you do this meeting seems,
I don't
it
know
doesn't
whether,
seem right. Like,
no.
perhaps you could readdress that and reconsider it. I submit my name, and I submit to you a request to readdress that and allow me to be part of it.
go right ahead and do that, and we'll adjudicate it between ourselves.
It'll come to the in-camera meeting, part of the
Yeah.
process.
So do I need to write something?
Yes, you do.
And just hand it to
Yes.
Submit it to the
Hand it
corporate
into the
officer.
clerk.
Can I do that today?
Certainly.
After the meeting, when she's done today, yes, I'm sure
And
she'll.
what time is meeting?
Really depends.
I just want an idea of.
Probably tomorrow will be the better date, because the timeline.
Okay, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And I have to come out here to do it, right?
Actually, there's an office downtown across from Overweight.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, council receiving a report, Councillor Smith. Again, well done and well put together, Roger, thank you very much. All those in favor? And Councillor Wershagen, recess?
Yes, please.
Okay, 5 minutes. We've got a couple other things we want to knock off here, but we'll recess for 5 minutes and come back to deal with council reports, or actually staff reports and 2 bylaw preparations. Okay.